Good day and welcome to this week's episode of Safety Culture Solutions, brought to you by Safety Culture Strategies. Each week we talk about a lot of these myriad of topics to be able to support a positive safety culture. This week we are pleased to have Dr. Chuck Pettinger with us from Predictive Solutions. He has over 30 years experience designing, implementing, and evaluating culture step change initiatives. His major interests include developing large-scale corporate safety change initiatives, assessing industrial safety cultures, and using advanced predictive analysis to develop leading indicators. Yes, he definitely has our attention, and conducting organizational leadership workshops. Chuck has consulted with a wide variety of industries, including Bayer, Bechtel, BD Biosciences, Caterpillar, Chevron, Coca-Cola, Cummins, ExxonMobil, Honeywell, Kiewit, Kaiser Permanente, Monsanto, and the Department of Energy, Los Alamos National Laboratory. He earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Florida, his master's from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and his doctorate from Virginia Tech. Chuck has also played a prominent role in writing and conducting research grants and managed projects in excess of $2.5 million funded by NIOSH and MSHA. In addition to being named one of the 101 top leaders in safety by ISHN, Dr. Pettinger has authored many training and technical manuals and customized them for use in industry and government agencies. He's also published numerous abstracts and papers and is routinely sought after to speak at professional conferences. This includes being invited to international multi-day workshops in Africa, Australia, China, France, Hong Kong, India, and Singapore. And Dr. Pettinger, welcome aboard. Thank you very much for joining us today. And I think it's a fair statement. This is not your first rodeo when we talk about what data means and how you can find leading indicators. Is that a safe statement, sir?
Yeah, I would say it is. I've been doing this for a long time, and I actually started thinking there in the beginning of the show I need to update my headshot. I think I was 20 when I took that thing. Actually, this is what quarantine does to you.
There you go.
Right? Your hair turns gray and you stop shaving.
But now, in fairness, I think I got the market cornered on gray hair, sir. I'm just saying. But we always have some broad topics I like to kind of introduce to kind of whet everybody's appetite. And obviously, I'd really like to learn more about this innovative techniques of what you guys have been able to do with leading indicators. So from your experience, and you've been around the world, no exaggeration, what's some key attributes for a positive safety culture?
Well, I mean, in addition to looking at data, what I really try to do is identify positive cultural proxies, because you can't necessarily measure culture directly. So you have to identify proxies within your systems and processes and all the data that you look at, that if you have a greater number of this, you probably have a better culture, right? So I think one of the key attributes that I see, probably three I would name. The best safety cultures that I've ever worked in, and as a matter of fact, one of the NIOSH sponsored grants that I was a part of, we identified this, right? One is that safety needs to be seen as personal. Right? I think we've gotten away from what safety was meant to be, which is keeping our fellow work family safe, right? It needs to be about people again. That's number one. Number two is we need to have empathy and caring. And I learned that from my professor that I got my PhD from at Virginia Tech. I don't know if you've ever heard of Scott Geller.
Yeah, he's been around.
Yeah. He's my mentor and lifelong friend now. So he taught me that caring, right? How you talk to employees. If you have empathy and caring, you're going to be able to have better conversations with them. Yes. And not only that, I think the third thing is you have to build trust.
Perfect.
And part of the conversations that you have can build trust within employees, and also how you use the data that you collect as leading indicators can help either erode trust or build trust. So I think that's one of the, three key things and really good, positive, proactive safety cultures that people need to focus on.
That's right on target. And you probably heard of Zig Ziglar, well, his son Tom, his Ziglar Institute. I've done a lot of stuff with Tom, and he's right on target about the need to emotionally connect with whomever you're working with, right? Because once you start getting those emotional connections, then you're no longer viewed as a boss. You start being viewed as a peer, and then commonly the next step, then you start seeing some trust.
That's right. And I'm sure you've worked with cultures that lack trust. And those types of cultures, it's hard to do any initiative because people are always looking over their shoulders, right? They don't think that data is going to be used. And again, when it comes to all these different programs that get thrown out there, sometimes they fall into what I call the venomous cycle, right? You roll out a new initiative, here's a new checklist, go out and give feedback. And then people start collecting it. And then ever so often, people start looking at the data, but nothing ever really happens with it. So then they start pencil whipping it. You know what I mean by pencil whipping it, right?
Absolutely correct.
And then the leadership looks at that data and says, really? How can we be 99% safe, right? We're still getting hurt. So what do? They ignore the data.
Yes.
The employees pencil whip more, and then it just becomes this venomous cycle where nobody's seeing any value, right? So we got to turn that around and make a positive, virtuous cycle where people are actually acting on that data, helping make the processes and systems safer for the employees so they can do the safe thing most of the time.
Perfect.
And people go home safe, right? And that's part of the momentum that we get when we use the data for positive things instead of for shaming and blaming people.
Perfect. I know one of the organizations I worked with, they looked at their work packages because work packages as a great way to look at productivity, avoid revisions if needed. So one of their measures was if you were 85%, if everything being good, you were green, everything was okay. One of the organizations, and they did hundreds of work packages in a quarter, they were always 87%. It never deviated. And so to me, not only is it pencil whipping, it's very, it's not even creative pencil whipping because you didn't bother to go to 86 or 88. And the senior management just thought that was great. And I says, well, candidly, have you really looked at depth at it? And then you kind of get that deer in the headlights, and sometimes they'll get a little frustrated because now it's not really the message they were accustomed to hearing.
Yeah, no. And if you think about it from the employee's perspective, they look at it and say, no one's really doing this. So why should I spend my time and energy doing something that no one's looking at, right? I was at a conference before this whole quarantine thing, and I was talking about rolling out new processes. And this, mechanic in the back of the room says, Chuck, I got this whole observation thing worked out. I take home a handful of these checklists, give them my daughter. She fills them out for me. I give her $5. And I'm done for the whole year.
Now, and she got her allowance.
That's right, exactly. I don't blame that guy, right? Because what does that say? Your process is broken.
Exactly correct. Exactly.
And it's a waste of time and effort. So that's a cultural proxy, right?
It's to briefly segue, like a lot of us, I monitor some of the safety groups on LinkedIn, and you'll see the video of somebody, Lord knows where, doing something really, really dangerous, not working near as safe as they could. And some of the responses I see from fellow safety professionals and even practitioners like yourself, oh, look how stupid that person is. He needs to be fired. And I'm saying, well, to me, slow that roll. Let's look at the management systems that allowed that behavior to be enabled. Because it's probably not the first time he did it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can probably guarantee that we have data that points to that exact risky behavior.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the scary thing. You talk to the C-suite, and they look at data all the time, and the only data they look at for safety is number of injuries.
Yes, how many people got hurt.
Yeah, we got to be a lot more detailed, give them more things to look at, talk about, besides how many people got hurt.
Yes.
Right, because that doesn't get us anywhere.
Doesn't really get us anywhere. So for a business leader, because unfortunately we get a lot of C-suite level folk viewing this on occasion. So if you had to pick one critical skill for a leader that they could either make sure they're doing or figure out how to start doing it to support a positive safety culture, what do you think that one thing would be to get them going the right way?
Easy, easy. And many of your fellow people on your talk here have said it. It's developing a conversation.
Perfect.
I did some work with a utility, a really large utility, and I had this conference with the C-suite, and they were going to go out and do audits out in the field. And I had one of the CFOs, right? His name was Bernie, and I kid you not, I'm not picking on CFOs, by the way, but he had a pocket protector, pens, right? Slide rule,
Oh yeah.
wears three-piece suits, dressed to the nines. He's like, what am I going to do going out there? And I can't tell these guys what they're doing right or wrong.
Correct.
I don't even know where to start. So here's the questions that you can ask. Next time you talk to a C-suite, go out there and say, or if you're going to get them out in the field, just have them ask these questions. Number one, what are you working on today? Most of these craft people are proud of what they do, and they'll be happy to tell you how awesome they are.
Yes.
Right? So what are you doing today? What are you working on? Let them explain. Number two, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Perfect.
Oh, well, let me tell you, if I make contact with this line, my hair will sizzle. It's going to be a bad day for all of us. Right? So what are they doing? The purpose of that question is get them to think about what are some of the risky things. And of course, you know what the third question is? Wow, that's amazing. What do you guys do to protect each other?
Perfect.
Oh, well, let me tell you, we put hoses up, we put blankets, we ground it, and they start going through in their mind all the stuff that they probably went through in their pre-job brief or tailboard. And the fourth question, what can I do to help?
Oh, beautiful.
So I gave those 4 questions to Bernie. He went out, and I kid you not, he found some steel-toed loafers, right, that he could wear out in the field.
Yeah,
perfect.
There you go.
But I saw him several months later after we did a follow-up meeting, and he's like, Chuck, you won't believe what these guys go through. Like, yeah, right? But how did those questions work out? Perfect. And he, out of all the C-suite, did the most crew visits out there of any of them. He loved it. So anyway, that's a good positive way. And again, the people that saw these corporate people out in the field, how do you think that made them feel?
Exactly.
Wow, they're taking time to come out and talk to me.
Yes.
They're not talking about schedule. They're not talking about productivity. They're talking about safety. And that is immeasurable in creating that culture.
It goes a long ways, and then you start getting that trust, which is, it's hard to gain, easy to lose, so you want to be cautious with it. I recently did a podcast and a paper I've had a lot of interest in, management by walking around versus just stumbling about. Right? Because it's so easy to do it wrong. And I tell C-suite people, especially like at the president level, I said, to me, the worst thing you can do is tell your senior team, go in the field starting tomorrow, but don't give them any ideas on how to do it successfully. Because odds are you actually may make it worse.
Yeah, approaching and coaching is a key skill that I try to teach those senior level guys.
Perfect.
So if you're going to approach them, go at it in terms of how you would coach somebody to hit a baseball, hit a golf ball, do whatever, right?
Perfect.
You don't only just focus on where they're screwing up, you focus on what they're doing that is right, and then how to improve.
Exactly.
So,
wait, and I've shared this with some other guests just real quick. And so I've been involved in some of like the quarterly safety meetings with a big committee, and they'll have the craft and then the C-suite folk. And so I'm leading one of them, and then they talk about the work they're doing. I says, well, Billy, how's your daughter doing in karate? Or Jimmy, I says, you took second place in that barbecue competition a month ago. I think you got one coming up again, right? And their face lit up. Right? Because they're just so, and so at the end of the meeting, the senior team comes and goes, how did you figure all that out? I said, well, when I'm out in the field, I say howdy, and I says, how was your weekend? Right? By then I've got a little relationship, so I stop talking about work to begin with, and they go, oh, he cares about me as a person.
Yeah.
So it's not just around the work. Tell you what, nobody go away. We're going to do our little commercial break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to be talking one of my favorite topics, and I'm totally sincere, leading indicators that provide you value. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Safety Culture Solutions.
Safety Culture Strategies provides world-class safety culture and safety program management consultative services for clients throughout the United States. Whether your company is pursuing Voluntary Protection Program STAR designation, ISO 45001 certification, or considering a comprehensive review of your current safety programs and processes, Safety Culture Strategies brings hands-on experience combined with a unique perspective that readily translates from senior management to task-level personnel. This collective skill set provides you with a very insightful health check of your overall safety management system that can also assist with reducing injuries and attrition, as well as increasing profitability. Safety Culture Strategies is also certified to provide Ziegler Institute employee engagement training and leadership coaching. When combined with established relationships with federal and state regulators, Safety Culture Strategies is uniquely positioned to assist the safety culture efforts of any company. For additional information, visit www.scstrat.com or call us at 702-780-1410. After all, every company has a safety culture, but is it the culture you want?
And we're back with Dr. Chuck Pettinger with Predictive Solutions. Been talking about a lot of ways to have management and better management engagement with the workers and the people spinning wrenches for a living. And the part I think everybody's been waiting for, I know I have, buckle your seatbelts. This guy has kind of got a grasp on what value-added leading indicators look like. So was that a nice way to set up this conversation for you, sir?
Perfect. Yeah. So my company specializes in collecting a lot of data, but anybody can collect data, right? A lot of people just throw it into an Excel spreadsheet, but if nobody looks at it, why are you collecting it, right? Just because I wear Fitbit doesn't mean I'm going to lose weight. I actually have to do something with that data. So you can have a fancy app, but if no one uses it, then you need to do something better to make that happen. So over the years, we've been collecting data and putting it into different buckets to make sure that the data is all regulated. And one of the things that we try to do is identify some good leading indicators. Now, we have over 500 million inspections in our data.
Wow.
So, yeah, and we get, millions a day.
Stars.
Yeah.
I'm just grasping that
data
number, so that is a bunch.
That's a lot. We have 4 data scientists on staff, and they look at the data and they create a predictive model where when they start seeing trends within the data, they can say that with some certainty, this location, business unit, department is going to have an injury.
Wow.
And we did some initial work with Carnegie Mellon. They have their data science institute there, and they found some really interesting things. We call them our 4 safety truths. There's actually about 10 really distinct things that we can look at that will be predictive of an injury. But there's 4 things that I found that I call the safety truths. 1, if you have an increase in the number of inspections, observations, or audits, you're going to see a decrease in injuries. Now, a lot of people claim that, right? If you go out and you do inspections, you're going to lower your injury rate. But nobody really has a big enough data set to say for sure that's going to happen. We actually have the data to say, if you do increase your inspections, observations, or audits, you're going to lower your incident rate. Now, there's a caveat to that. So safety truth number 2 is not only do you need to increase the amount, but you need to increase the diversity of your observers.
Can you expound on that a little bit, Doctor? That one's kind of intriguing.
Sure. So, well, think about it this way. Would you rather get 100 inspections from one person or one inspection from 100 different people? Right? It's beautiful. The power of numbers, right? So what we found, and this is going to be kind of interesting, as the locations, and we had hundreds of companies in our data set at that time, the locations that had 100% of the inspections done by only the safety professionals actually had more injuries.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Now,
Wow.
why does that make sense? Because if the safety professionals are the only one doing inspections, who owns safety?
The safety guys, gals.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And in a lot of companies, it's the safety guy's responsibility.
Yeah.
But what was interesting, as the more diversity of the observers, right, as the leadership, as the engineers, as the janitors, as everyone got involved in the system, the lower their incidents were. So, safety truth number one, increase inspections. Safety truth number two, get as many people to participate as possible. Safety truth number three, I call this the pencil whipping safety truth. If you start seeing an increase in your 100% safe inspections, you're going to have more injuries.
Wow.
Now, that's data for you. So,
Wow.
and I've had people say, no, Chuck, we are that good. We're that good. And I said, all right, so if you are that good, then you need to change your checklist because you've got this one knocked out, right? If
Very
you're
good point.
observing it all the time and 100% safe, then you're wasting people's time. Change your checklist up. But most of the time, it's because there's no value, right? So, one, increase inspections. Two, increase diversity. Three, start looking at those, call them unicorn inspections, where you don't see anything that needs improvement, which is crazy.
I got to write that
And
down.
safety
That's really cool.
You like that? Yeah. Safety truth number four is if you start seeing an increase in risky things, you're going to have
Okay.
more injuries. Now, again, that makes sense. But the problem with that is that if you are seeing an increase in risky things, you're not doing anything with the data, which is just,
okay.
that's as bad as pencil whipping it, right? Because the data is staring you in the face. I mean, I was having a conference with some senior level leaders, and they said, I don't believe this whole predictive model thing. And I said, well, your location, was like 98% a chance of having an incident. Did you guys have an incident last month? Well, yeah. I said, all right, well, let's look at your data. Well, there's a bunch of hand issues, glove issues, pinch point issues. And I said, let me guess, did you have some sort of hand injury? Well, yeah, but anybody could have guessed that. I'm like, all you had to do is look at those data, look at that number. The data tells a story, and you just got to take the time to read it, and then you can proactively jump on that information. And that's the power of using good, actual leading indicators, and not just, how long have we been hearing about leading indicators?
Long time.
I mean, at least. And people are still like, well, what are my leading indicators? So anyway, that is some of the power that we get from this. Now, we do custom models for people. So we get really global companies that come to us and say, here's our data. Develop a predictive model for us.
Wow.
And we can get down to the body part that's going to be injured, the type of injury. It gets that specific. Now, I wouldn't recommend that specificity, because then people just go around and look at that individual thing and they forget everything else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've learned quite a bit in predictive analytics. And over the years, it's becoming more and more of a corporate strategy, right? To look at business intelligence and artificial intelligence. And it's evolving rapidly. Almost everybody is using some form of artificial intelligence to predict where the market's going to go, to predict where they need to have a product placement. But what are we doing in safety? We're counting owie and boo-boos.
Yes.
Right?
How many people got
So
hurt?
you listen to all the rest of the C-suite. Well, we have the strategy for taking over this thing. Safety, what do you got for us? Well, we had 5 boo-boos last month.
Ooh.
Right. Yeah, we got to get it up to the C-suite level, give them some data that they can use, have conversations about, and then we can pinpoint strategies on trying to be more proactive instead of shaming and blaming someone for getting hurt. That's where we're going to make the biggest difference.
I know some organization I've worked with, and somebody got injured, and at the next C-suite meeting, they look at the safety manager and say, Fred, what are you going to do about it? I went, ooh, that's a different approach. So once again, who owns safety? And that safety department. Two quick questions are kind of connected. So for our viewers,
Sure.
they're really getting intrigued with what they're hearing today, and they should be. So two thoughts for a company that really wants to start leaning that direction, have the proper trajectory. What's some good places for them to start, and what type of services does Predictive Solutions help them with?
Sure. Well, depending on where your culture is, right, and that's kind of your gig,
Right.
to identify really good leading indicators. The companies that typically come to us are a lot more forward thinking in their strategies. So what I'm seeing a lot is identifying PSIPs, so potential serious incident fatality, right? The precursors.
Yes.
So what they do is they start recategorizing near misses, first aids, and injuries on whether it was a SIF or not. And so that gives them a lot more data. So I'll give you an example. I was at a construction company, and this guy fell through a skylight, and he grabbed hold so he didn't fall, and they recorded that as a near miss. Well, yeah, he was lucky enough to grab a hold
Yeah.
before he dropped, but that's a SIF event,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
before it wouldn't have gotten recorded. So what we're doing is looking at the severity of it. So once you create these SIF processes, another one is critical risk management. So what you do is you take these really risky things, the things that could kill you, maim you,
Yep.
and then identify strategies to make sure you have all of the contingencies in place that if something bad happens, you won't lose somebody or you
Perfect.
won't harm
Perfect.
them, right? So that is beyond just creating a checklist and going out and doing observations, right? There's a lot of strategy in it. And it all wraps into the human performance, identifying, what are the systems that are putting people in safe positions,
Beautiful.
and then perpetuating those throughout the organization. And then you have the data to help follow up and, give you some teeth, right? Give you some meat
Beautiful.
to feed your C-suite.
Beautiful. And you're talking about risk. I've done a lot with companies. I'm a big fan of Mill Standard 8882 from DOD, and we will make it a 4x4 or a 5x5. So a 1A, that could be really bad, versus a 5E. Well, that might be a first aid. And then also that kind of helps with some of the daily briefings. If you're up in a category 2, okay, we really want to make sure we double check in our PPE, or whatever the cases are, to help make them aware of it. So as a thumbnail for that, for these companies, kind of figure out where you are in your culture to begin with. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Look at your data, and that's one of the things OSHA has been noticing. You're seeing minor injury rates. Those are kind of scaling down, but the SIFs are remaining constant the last few years. So I think that's the next kind of aha moment for these organizations, because in turn that can also permeate through their other systems that are quote unquote performing well and reinforce some of the positive things they're doing.
You're absolutely right. A safety professional is not going to get fired for having 4 stitches in somebody's hand. But if he loses an employee,
Yeah.
right? So what we need to do is get ahead of that. And I
Yes.
agree completely. There's a lot of companies who have knocked out the easy stuff.
Yeah.
They've knocked out the easy stuff. Now, to get to that next level, you have to identify the things, those critical risks that people are taking, and making sure that you have contingencies in place for any situation that could potentially harm someone. And then shore those up to make sure that all the locations, divisions, departments are using the same strategies. And then we as a corporation can make sure that we're, managing that risk.
Absolutely correct. Well, thank you so much for being with me today, Doctor. And so, real quick, easy one for you. I think you've actually spoken at some conferences before. So, if you've got C-suite people in the room, the safety directors, some of the safety peeps. So, you've done a great presentation. And as you're walking off stage, what's 2 or 3 things you hope they take back home with them and share?
Well, the idea of having better safety conversations about your data, making sure that you make safety about people and not about rules, regulations, policies, and procedures. And lastly, use your data in a way that makes it more proactive. Don't wait for something bad to happen, right? We need to be a lot more predictive instead of reactive in our methodologies.
Right on target. I want to thank once again Dr. Chuck Pettinger with us, Predictive Solutions. And you know me, anytime you want to reach out to Safety Culture Solutions, you can find me through Safety Culture Strategies or Mike at scstrat.com, or go to my website, www.scstrat.com. And in closing, I want to share some thoughts from Carly Fioris. She was the former CEO of Hewlett Packard. She's a player, does exceptionally well. The goal is to turn data into information and information into insight. Till next time, be safe out there, and wishing you all the best with your safety culture journey. Bye-bye for now.